Hello Summoners, and welcome back to another episode of Underrated Picks. In this episode, we're going to cover picks for the 9.20 patch that don't really get the recognition that they deserve. Our analysts have handpicked these champions for various reasons, including win rate and their strengths as champions. If you've been searching for a good pocket pick to have at the ready, then search no further because today we'll cover champions across every role. Make sure to leave any comments or feedback you have for us down below, as we are always reading them. For today's question of the day, what is the most feels bad man situation that you can find in League? For me, it's whenever a teammate has a brand ult following them and they flash onto me. That's not exactly what I hope for when I tell somebody I want to get closer to them. Anyway, leave your answers down below. Before we get started, make sure you're going to ProGuides.com if you want to see huge improvements in your rank. We upload video guides similar to this one on our website every single day, and as of now, we're currently uploading a Challenger gameplay analysis guide for every single champion, so make sure to click the link below. Also, we have an exclusive coaching feature called Play with a Pro, which provides instant on-demand 24/7 coaching from the best of the best. Trust me guys, you don't want to miss out on this, so sign up today. Now with that being said, let's jump into it. Kicking off our top lane is Nocturne. He's truly an odd rare pick in a solo lane. Nevertheless, he's vastly underestimated and actually does pretty well. What makes him a decent laner is his sustain, insane all-in, and wave clear. Yes, it's true, he's pretty gankable, but many champions suffer from this as well, so that shouldn't be the only thing barring you from picking him up. While his pick rate last patch was just below 0.5%, he did hold a 53% win rate. Sure, the sample size is pretty small, but it's large enough to at least merit him as a decent pick, and it definitely helps that he's able to utilize the precision tree's lethal tempo and presence of mind very effectively. Anytime you land a Q, you activate lethal tempo, and you can look for an advantageous trade. Attack speed's value rises with bonus attack damage, and you get plenty of that from your Q. Alongside your spell shield and point and click fear, it makes you an extremely potent all-inner when you pick Nocturne. Just like Jungle Nocturne, top lane Nocturne is able to use his ultimate to make a pick and engage on his foes from across the map. Your strong wave clear doesn't end after the laning phase. You can continue to hard push later on into the game and look to engage with your ultimate while roaming. Nocturne's ability to roam and pick off foes is what makes him such a powerful solo queue pick. His paranoia is a headache to play against, and the enemy mid laner is probably going to develop some anxiety seeing you missing from your own solo lane so often. Make sure to pressure not only your own lane, but other ones as well with your ult. Next up is Quinn. Similarly to Nocturne, she's a great roaming pick and can make picks across the map. What makes her so different though is that she's a ranged champion. This gives her a lot more safety and also means that she'll have a lot more favorable matchups, especially in the top lane. Make sure to abuse wave management when you play Quinn. If you need help understanding wave management, make sure to check out ProGuides.com as well as our other videos, the only wave control guide you'll ever need. We have lots of material to help you develop a strong understanding of wave management over there. Anyway, while you play Quinn, you want to constantly pressure your opponent with either freezes or slow pushes. By freezing, you use your ranged advantage to constantly poke out your opponent until they're too low to do anything. Most Quinn players like to take Ignite, as this will help provide some lethal threat. With slow pushing, you can build up your wave and crash it into the turret. Afterwards, you can look to roam mid or try to take turret plating, or even poke your opponent every time they try to farm. By doing this alone, you'll be able to constantly create huge leads in most of your games. Later on, you can look to push in the side lane and then make picks with your ultimate. With Quinn's incredible movement speed, it's really easy to pick off opponents that are overextended. And here's a quick recap of all of the builds that we mentioned for top lane. Now, let's move on to the jungle. For jungle, our first pick is Ivern. He received a buff this patch that increased his range, and he now no longer relies on brushes for this, so this is a quality of life buff all game, alongside a huge buff in the early game. The added utility that Ivern provides for his team makes him invaluable. Teamfights are currently a huge factor in games, so his extra shields allow his teammates to survive burst and deal even more damage. As a bonus, he's got Daisy to accompany him on peel duty. Whenever his team is even or ahead, Ivern is honestly OP. In a sense, he's a win more champion, as he's able to neutralize a lot of the plays that his opponents want to make, and he brings out the best in his teammates by buffing them up. He's a great way to round out comps that have already plenty of engage. Give one of your carries a break by picking Ivern and give them some breathing room to make plays. As a jungler, he's incredibly annoying to play against. His counter jungling is insanely strong, and he can instantly swipe away a camp as long as he has his smite up. You definitely want to pick him if the enemy team's goal is to try to kill one of your carries. Ivern makes this so much harder for them to accomplish. Alternatively, you can pick him in most of your games as long as your laners have priority. Having the freedom to walk into the enemy's jungle is great as a jungler, but Ivern especially benefits from this. In 2v2s or 3v3s, Ivern can support those winning laners and enable them to carry those fights. Next up for jungle, we have Poppy. Poppy, aside from being a great counter to junglers relying on some sort of dash, she's also a great ganker against specific champions. Champions like LeBlanc, Camille, Rakan, and Lucian are very susceptible to Poppy's ganks. Due to her W's steadfast presence, Poppy is able to punish her opponents for not holding on to their dashes. Most players, even in higher elos, aren't accustomed to playing against Poppy's W and will end up wasting their escapes. Even if they hold on to them, that's a solid 2.5 seconds you have to wail on them for free. Poppy is not an every game champion, she's more of a situational pick. She's not bad by any margin, it's just that she's an okay pick overall. It really comes down to the enemy team's comp. There are going to be many games where Poppy will be literally the strongest possible pick because there are so many dashes on the enemy team. Poppy is one of the best answers to how much mobility there is in the game, so make sure to take advantage of her talents when you see the opportunity to do so. And of course, here's a recap of the jungle champions we just mentioned. Now, let's move on to the mid lane. Kicking off in mid lane, we have an oddball pick that's emerged from seemingly nowhere. Tryndamere is known for being a top lane split pusher, although he turns out to be a formidable adversary in the mid lane. What makes him so strong in the mid lane is how much sustain he brings. Alongside his Q, if you take Second Wind and Revitalize, it allows Tryndamere to farm up until he has enough gold for a good reset. From that point forward, he can start playing aggressively because of his built-in critical strike chance and of course incredible all-in. It's really hard to shut out a Tryndamere because his E and his ultimate make him really safe to ganks and even safer to turret dives. During the mid to late game, you can focus on split pushing because that's what makes Tryndamere so strong and so annoying. With more items, he's able to kill his opponents faster, and the tower dive pressure he gets from his ultimate makes it incredibly terrifying for his opponents to try to match him. You'll almost always pull several enemies into your lane to stop you, or find free kills on the enemy under their own turret. If Tryndamere ever gets the snowball rolling or gets fed, it's almost impossible to stop him. If he gets more cooldown reduction, it becomes nearly impossible to kite him as well. The fact that his ultimate makes him unkillable means you're not really able to do anything if you don't have the levels or the items to survive. Next up in mid lane, we have Wukong. You'd be surprised, but last patch he actually held a 54% win rate. While he hasn't found much success as a jungler or really a top laner, he's actually been making a name for himself in the mid lane on the down low. Wukong's short stealth enables him to be a game-winning playmaker. He's able to one-shot his primary target and then deal significant AoE damage with his ultimate. While our other favorite Beyblade, Garen, is killing it on the Rift, it's important to not forget about the monkey as well. This champion just loves to do damage. Even when he's behind, he can still make it happen. And of course, it's solo queue after all. So the combination of short stealth, CC, and high burst damage gives Wukong players all the tools they need to randomly claw back into the game with just one good fight. It's also not like he just automatically loses every single laning phase. It's not the best, but he does have some favorable matchups, usually against other melee champions as well as some immobile mages. Because of his damage output and he can use his stealth to back off after he's used his other abilities, once he hits level 6, that's when the pain train really starts. He's typically able to find solo kills with his level 6 power spike, and his ultimate also helps him when he decides to roam as well. Our final pick in the mid lane is going to be Zilean, who's doing pretty well for himself. Zilean plays both a supportive and a carry role simultaneously. He has good damage in CC, but especially in choke points, he's able to either use his E as a movement speed buff for his teammates or to ensure that mispositioned enemies can never escape. One of Zilean's best strengths is that he's able to save his teammates from that pesky person who keeps killing them. If there's a diver on the enemy team who keeps killing one of your carries, you can easily keep them alive and then change the course of entire games with your ultimate. You can punish enemies for overcommitting to their priority targets since they'll be resurrected immediately after. Zilean is also a pretty versatile pick and he fits into pretty much any team composition. Whenever his team needs to play front to back, he can play fights pretty slowly looking for clumped enemies to double bomb. In the case that his team is on the offense, he can use his allies as a vessel and also keep his divers alive instead. Here's a recap of the champions that we mentioned for mid lane. Now let's move on to the bottom lane. First up, we have Vel'Koz. He typically sees play as a mid laner or a support, but he can definitely flex into the bottom lane role as well. Since he has high wave clear, good range, and good scaling, he's a natural fit for this role. If your team lacks magic damage, you can consider picking Vel'Koz as he can remedy this pretty quickly. As a pick, he provides a lot of teamfighting presence due to his zone control, long range, and crowd control. During the laning phase, you can either free farm with your abilities or try to slowly poke out your opponents. In cases that they start to miss position, you're definitely free to try to punish them. After level 6, you have tons of kill pressure, so if you land a full combo or follow up on your partner's engage, they're as good as dead. One of Vel'Koz's weaknesses is that he's not able to take turrets quickly, although it's a trade-off because his insane wave clear also means that his opponents will have difficulty taking his. Overall, he's a strong enough pick to justify picking as long as he fits well into your team comp. Although Sona isn't nearly as popular of a bottom lane pick as she used to be several months ago, she's still just as strong. She does good damage, provides a lot of utility, and also allows her team to have more wards on the map. Sona's early game is really annoying. She gets paid to poke you down and can slowly heal back any damage that you do to her. Worst of all, she gets to pull the Kleptomancy gold every time she trades with you. Going even is basically a loss against Sona, so her opponents are forced to either play really aggressive or accept a loss during the laning phase. Sona's late game is terrifying. She scales so well as an AP threat, while simultaneously providing a ton of utility for her teammates. Winning teamfights against a late game AP Sona is nearly impossible unless you kill her first. If she has a Taric alongside her, this is pretty much impossible. Otherwise, she can play passively, continue to spam her heals and shields, making sure that your team wins out in longer fights. The longer that the fight goes, the more likely Sona is able to do what she wants to do. This means that when playing against a Sona, you have to be clean with your execution, otherwise you'll get hard punished later on into the game. And here's a recap of the bottom lane builds. Now let's conclude with support. For supports, we'll start with Zyra. She's held solid win rates for consecutive patches, but her popularity has seen a downward trend. We're here to bring a stop to that, because she's actually a great pick. Zyra's long range and high damage make her a strong laner against many opponents. You'll want to pick her if your team needs a damage carry, or to try to counter a team that's keen on diving. Teamfights are where Zyra starts to thrive. It's common for her to lead damage charts as her ideal fights are pretty drawn out, with her opponents exhausting resources to take her out. You'll play a more peel-centric or carry role in fights, setting up your plants and controlling fights with your ultimate. The only time you'll look to dive opponents is to finish them off, otherwise you'll be letting them come to you or just poke them down. Especially with her Liandry's and Rylai's, Zyra's damage over time is insane. The longer that the fight goes, the better it is for her, so don't be afraid to take things slow. You don't always have to get kills either. Getting chunks on your opponents accomplishes the same thing. You're just missing out on the bonus gold. You can still push for objectives or continue pressuring the other ones that you're playing towards. Our final support pick is Bard. He's in the same boat as Zyra. He's a great pick, but he's slowly losing some popularity. We just wanted to chime in on the matter. You'll want to pick Bard for his ability to carry laning phase and for the utility that he provides later on. If your team needs a hard engage, especially, make sure you're locking in Bard. His ultimate is both long range and very effective. Make sure to take advantage of the geography of Summoner's Rift by aiming your ult into the chokes of the jungle. This makes it very difficult to dodge and guarantees a clean engage. Another reason to pick Bard is because of his quick roams and his scaling. Technically, Bard does scale infinitely with chimes, so it's not unfound for him to contribute heavily into the late game in terms of team fighting. As for his roaming, he's able to kill two birds with one stone by picking up chimes. Not only do they lead him one step closer to that late game fantasy, they also provide a temporary movement speed boost, allowing him to traverse through the river faster. And of course, here's a recap of the support builds. That's going to conclude this episode of Underrated Picks. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys want more content to help you improve, check out ProGuides.com, where we've teamed up with pro players to create guides designed to help you take your game to the next level. Also, keep an eye out on our YouTube channel, where we're constantly updating it with new content just like this. Good luck on the Rift, and we'll see you all